Good evening, Clarets, and welcome to the preview show as we look ahead to Burnley's trip to Ashton Gate to face a Bristol City side currently only 3 points out off a playoff place. Can the Clarets make ground in the top two in the early kickoff? This is the No Nay Never podcast. You'll have realised already, listeners, but I am not Natalie. It's Adam here doing the preview show this week. Natalie's otherwise engaged, but she'll be back next week, don't worry. And you'll be pleased to hear that we've got the main man with us this evening, Dave Roberts, to preview the trip to Bristol City. How are you doing, Dave, after the latest of what seems like endless international breaks?
It's the last one, I think, isn't it? We've had three international breaks now in quick succession in the early part of the season, and I think we're glad to get those out of the way and get a proper run of matches now. Certainly up to the Christmas and New Year matches before we get into the FA Cup early in the new year.
Yeah, I think I'm trying to make as many excuses as possible for Burnley's performances so far this season, even though the results have been okay. And I think the fact that they've only had the team together 3 or 4 weeks at a time since that last week in August is what I'm reeling out at the moment. But hopefully that'll improve with the run of games. So where do we want to start this week? Have you got any stats for us, Dave, ahead of the game?
Yeah, a couple of stats to kick us off. Ashton Gate has been the home of Bristol City since 1904, and ground redevelopments in the last decade mean that it currently has a capacity of around 26,500. Prior to 1904, Bristol City played their home games at St John's Lane, which was about 1.5 miles away from the Robins' current ground. Some of the players who've represented both clubs are John Pender, Liam Robinson, Jerry Harrison, Adeyekin Bayi, Wade Elliott and Tom Heaton. In addition, some more recent names may well be involved this weekend. Josh Brownhill and Hanno Masengo for Burnley, as well as Naki Wells and Luke McNally for Bristol City. Ex-Claret Scott Twine had been out injured prior to the international break and seems unlikely to feature this weekend.
Very good. Yeah, some recent Clarets legends there. John Pender and Liam Robinson were in the side when I first started watching us. And I think Wade Elliott and Tom Heaton will always be up there as some of my favourite Clarets. It's an interesting one to say about the capacity and the attendance, and obviously Bristol being a massive city. They've only really come close to the Premier League on that one occasion where they lost to Hull in the playoff final, haven't they? But not really threatened since. But obviously they've had a decent start this year, and doesn't seem to that much at the top end. So we'll see, I suppose. Hopefully they start the charge after this weekend anyway.
There's a word for that, isn't there? Preston-esque.
That is a very, very good. Oh, they're the best of the lot at that, aren't they? And let's hope that stays that way. Have you got a recent visit for us to look back on, or any visit for us to look back on next, Dave?
Yeah, we've got in our No Nay Never Remembers section, we have plenty of options for this week for this feature with 3 wins on our last 3 visits. There was a memorable 2-2 draw in 2007. That was when Clark Carlisle, unlikely scorer, grabbed a late equaliser. That was with an overhead kick in stoppage time to get that 2-2 draw. But I'm going to select another game, that one that I was at. That was during the 2008-2009 promotion season and took place just before Christmas. That was on the 20th of December 2008. After a goalless first half, the home side were awarded a penalty on 52 minutes. And Nicky Maynard made no mistake and gave them the lead. But Burnley bounced back with goals from Martin Patterson and super sub Stephen Thompson to do something we don't manage too often in away games, and came from behind to secure the win. Owen Coyle's side weren't quite good enough to get an automatic promotion place that season, but by securing a playoff place with momentum in the later stages of the campaign, we went on to gain promotion via the playoffs after beating Sheffield United in a very memorable match at Wembley.
Very good. Yeah, there's quite a few decent away trips. I don't know whether we'll go over it later on, so I won't go into that yet. But you're in for a treat this evening, listeners. You'll have realised that we haven't managed to get a Bristol City fan on this recording with me and Dave. That's because we're on the night shift. But luckily, Rich was on hand earlier on to do the day shift with Bristol City fan Matt with us from Three Peeps in a Podcast.
Good evening, No Nay Never fans, listeners. So tonight we've got the opposition view with Matt Withers from the Three Peeps in a Podcast. So good evening, Matt. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very well, thanks, Rich. Yeah, not too bad at all.
Fantastic. Where does the Three Peeps in a Podcast come from then, and the spelling too?
Yeah, so it stems from the host really, guy called Patch Warner, worked for Lloyd's Banking Group, and with two of his mates, Mike and Rich, they spend their time chatting generally, and thought, well, why he was at Patches in comms, and thought, well, why don't we do a podcast? And this is going back quite a few years now. So they would just do a general Bristol podcast, not football related at all.
Oh, right,
They've
okay.
had various guests on. They've had Just Stelling. They've had, and his name's gone completely out of my head, but the lad in Derek, the comedian, not Ricky Gervais, but the other character. He does Chatterbix now.
Oh, right, okay.
As a podcast. They've had it's completely gone. I'll have to think of it because it'll annoy me. So they were doing sort of regular kind of podcasts in local Bristol companies, and then myself and Patch were in BBC Radio Bristol doing the Bristol City show that they do called Sound of the City. First time we met, we got talking. We got on. We had some shared interests other than Bristol City. And then Patch phoned me after a particularly depressing game that we had against Huddersfield away. And I travelled up for the game and was working in Liverpool the following day. And we started talking. He said, should we do a podcast on it? So that's kind of where the Bristol City Robins Review was born. And then Patch is heavily involved in the Bristol City Former Players Association. So he also has a third limb of the Three Peeps, which is a Robins Reunited, where he gets ex-players back
Oh, wow,
and
fantastic.
reunites kind of, centre-half partnerships or whatever it may have been.
Nice.
So yeah, that's kind of where it stemmed from, really. And we've been going, I don't know, it feels like forever,
Yeah,
if I'm
similar.
honest with you.
Yeah, similar to us on the podcast, and a lot of the time you forget that you're actually people listening. It's just like having a
Yeah,
chat with your mates,
and
isn't
that's how
it?
it started. Exactly
And
that.
that's
And
what
we always have a third person every game. We've been really fortunate that we've had past players, we've had present players. Tommy
amazing.
Conway recently, or a
Nothing.
couple of years back, joined us.
Yeah,
And it's great. I mean, I don't know about you, Rich, but football plays such a massive part in my life, but also my mental health. And when we've had a defeat, I can easily get quite down about it, but talking about it and putting the world to rights make it better. And we always start our podcast with a men's talk club, and we always ask the three of us, the guests that we've got on there, how we're feeling out of 10. And then we talk that through. So yeah, it's made a big difference.
that's
Certainly through
amazing.
COVID, especially. COVID
Yeah,
was
it was
it
tough.
was a real lifesaver for lots of people
Fantastic.
through that.
No, that's
Yeah,
amazing to hear, and I think for any men listening on this podcast,
yeah,
it's really important to talk about it. And
100%.
yeah, same for me. I think it's at the end of the day, we all, for me, we have tough jobs at times, and for
Yeah,
regular listeners of our podcast, I say I'm a PE teacher, and it's
yeah,
an amazing job, but it's challenging. And
I
that
bet it is.
Saturday afternoon, or Thursday afternoon, or Sundays afternoons, which
Yeah,
seems to be with Sky this season, it's just a little bit of escapism, isn't
it
it?
is
So.
100%. Yeah.
But yeah, for Burnley this season, Matt, it's I said to you off there, it's not been the most thrilling. It's been a little
Mm,
bit dreary and a little bit turgid. For our sake, we just hope it's a good game at the weekend. And it's my first trip down to Bristol, my first trip down
okay.
to Ashton Gate, so I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Similar to you, I mentioned to you then, I'm not from Burnley, I'm from Wigan, so it's a really family connection.
Yeah.
So I'm meeting my auntie down there and traveling down with my dad. So I'm really looking forward to the game.
Yeah. I think you'll enjoy Ashton Gate. The
Proper
away end.
ground, proper
Yeah,
football stadium, isn't
it
it?
it
Similar.
really is. I mean, we've had a lot of work done on it over the last few seasons. The away end used to be a home end, and funnily enough, is where I used to sit in the Atio stand. It's the oldest part of the ground now, because of the redevelopment. So I don't know what it's like so much within the concourse, but there's quite a bit that goes on around the ground, and certainly the other entrance to the away end, you've got lots of outdoor bars and food sort of elements. So it's a really good match day experience. Yeah, I think you'll enjoy it.
I'm really looking forward to it. So we'll get on to the match day. So obviously, going back to last season, you come 11th in the league, and obviously Bristol City for a while now have been an established championship club. You're currently 10th in the table, and you had a good win away from home against Norwich last time out. So how are you feeling about this season so far? Are you confident that you can kick on and really push towards those playoffs?
Yeah, I mean, in all honesty, it is such a tough league, and we actually had the fans forum last night at the club, and they had the chairman, the manager, the technical director, and the captain Jason Knight there, and fans were asking, when are we going to get in the Premier League? Nobody's got an entitlement. As we were talking off air, Burnley have done fabulously well over the last 10, 15 years, but you've had your dark times as well.
We've been spoiled, really. We have been spoiled, for a club like ours to have the success we have.
The calibre of manager that you had and the players, from our point of view, we started the season, and I'm very realistic in terms of, as long as I see progression and as long as I feel we're moving in the right direction, I kind of take that. But we're established as a championship side, but it's a bit of a standing joke between us and Preston as to who wins the trophy for finishing sort of 11th to 14th.
I've seen that on Twitter,
and it feels a bit like that. So certainly for younger fans, they tend to be, I think the world's a lot more, everybody expects things immediately. But I think even for fans of my age and above, our expectation this year is to see that progression, is that we're top 10 for sure, but we're challenging for the playoffs right up until the last knockings. Now, if that means we get in the playoffs, then great. Do I think we've got a side that are capable of beyond that? Probably not. I think the money that's in the league and the teams that are in there, the likes of yourselves, Sheffield United, Leeds, there are some big teams in there. But we are playing some really good football at times. And you referenced the Norwich, the last game out. We hadn't won at Norwich, I think, in something like 15 years. And I've been to a lot of those games, and we've been soundly beaten a lot of the time. But we really deserve to win. We'd gone away to Middlesbrough this season and won 2-0 away from home. And again, it wasn't a fluke result. There are a number of games, Hull City, where we were leading and conceded a last-minute penalty. Cardiff, we should have got something more out of. So other than really a half of football against Derby away and against Blackburn, which for you, I know that we don't want to talk about, but Blackburn soundly beat us scoreline-wise. We've been in every game, and we've played really well. We had to defend really well against Leeds. Sheffield United was a different game, quite open. But for a bit of poor goalkeeping, and Max O'Leary has been great for us, we were leading that game up until probably the 75th minute, and then that goal, and they get a last minute one. So we're playing some good football, Rich, and I think I'd be disappointed if we weren't, as I say, in the top 10 and challenging for a playoff place. And by that, like I say, I mean last couple of games, you're still within a shout of making it yourself. So the football's been a joy to watch at times this season.
Fantastic. I think for your Bristol Cities, Millwall, dare I say Blackburn, I think this is a season where somebody could go up, because I don't think the standard's amazing. We talked, it'd be interesting for you, Matt. If you go in and around, and ask a few Burnley fans this weekend and have a chat with them, because they're certainly not impressed by. Well, most fans aren't too impressed by what we're doing this season. We're fourth in the league, but we're not convincing at all. We're not winning a lot of football matches. We're not creating a lot of chances. Obviously, there's been a lot of turmoil in the club. So I think this season, if a club can have a bit of consistency and have a good run, then you've got every chance of going up. And you mentioned there about the style of football. So you've transitioned from Nigel Pearson into Liam Manning. Has obviously had a really sad personal tragedy.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I seen the tribute that Bristol did, and I thought it was very touching. But you're really impressed with him, aren't you? I know he made his name at MK Dons, playing very good football.
He did, yeah. He's not for everybody, and I think that's more because Nigel Pearson was actually very popular with a large section of the vocal fan base. And the way the club handled, I think even now by their own admission, the way they handled Nigel Pearson's sacking wasn't great. But Liam Manning has come in and he's playing a different brand of football. He's very much likes to get the ball down, likes to create chances. Possibly the tragedy in the fact that Liam stepped away for a little bit and his number 2, Chris Hogg, came in. We did go to 3 at the back, and I think that was also because of injuries that we had. But that also changed a little bit of the way that we were playing, because although we've had some really good games this season, we weren't picking up the results that we should have been. So I think he's now found a formation. The players are buying into the way that he wants to play. Ironically, our big signing, Scott Twine, who obviously a lot about, has injured again.
So he won't be playing?
He won't be playing, no. Talking today in the press conference that he's kind of back training, but I think this one comes too early, even for him to make the bench.
Injuries at Burnley. I think that's the reason why we probably sold him, because he's a player where I'd definitely like to be in our squad. Whether he'd start for us at the moment is 50-50, but when you've got that quality on the ball, obviously from set pieces, particularly free kicks, it's an absolute weapon to have.
Yeah, I mean, he's a player that. So we got to meet Liam Manning from a podcast, and other Bristol City podcasts were there as well at the start of the season, and it was before Scott Twine had signed, and he was talking about and actually was talking about how difficult it was to try and get the deal done with Burnley because of what had happened with Company, and I'm not even sure if Company had gone by that point, but also with the sheer number of players that you had. But obviously we got the deal done, came in, even when he was on loan with us last year, he got an injury and missed, I think, something like 8 or 9 games, something similar again this year. Okay. So he's not really for us hit the ground running. But even with those injuries that he's had this season, and I don't know how many games he's now missed, it's got to be probably 7 or 8, maybe even more.
50% of the games he's missed, probably.
Exactly. Yeah. Easily that this season. But he was still the top creator of chances in the league, let alone for us, but in the league up until probably a couple of games ago. So him actually dropping out, and we've got Max Bird playing in there now in that 10. And Max Bird is really starting to find his place in that position, because he was more of a 6 or an 8, really. Okay. So that's working well. And then we've got another player that you'll know, Naki Wells, who...
never really got...
Yeah, well, even for us, Richie, at the start of the season, if you'd have said to me that, and I don't mean this disrespectfully to Naki because he's a player I really like, but 34-year-old Naki Wells, who's going to be out of contract at the end of this year, would be our number 1 striker, you'd have probably laughed. But he's actually playing probably the best football of his Bristol City career at the moment.
He wants that new contract then, I think.
Well, that might come into it, but...
Wants a final big payday.
he's really stepped up, and his attitude. Liam Manning talks about his attitude all the time. So, it'll be interesting. I mean, as I say, disappointed that Twine won't be. From our point of view, great to see Josh Brownhill back. Josh Brownhill was a loved player at Bristol City. We actually thought he would have, when you were, the relegation that he had, we thought he might move. Because I think we've got a sell-on clause as well with him.
For me, with Brownhill, he's not good enough for that top level.
Yeah.
We've watched a lot of him now. I think, do you know what? He's probably not as loved at Burnley as much as he should do. He's captain.
Yeah.
If you look at maybe midfielders from the past, you like to I'm going back a bit of a generation from the Dyche team. Yeah. Looking at like Dean Marney, Scott Arfield, etc. Similar-ish players. He's probably not as loved as much as them. I think he's a bit underappreciated. I think he's been a victim of Burnley's success a little bit, where that we've gone up to the Premier League and we've watched the likes of Jack Cork, Stephen Defoe, Sander Burge playing midfield for us, and he's just not quite at that level.
Yeah.
And sometimes when there's a game with Brownhill where like you lead away and you're winning 1-0 and the back's against the wall and you maybe not got as much of the ball, it's fantastic. But when you've got like 70% possession and you're looking to break a team down, it lacks a little bit of quality, but I'm not going to knock it, because I think this, with all the madness that's gone on this season, the transfer window, and reportedly players refusing to play and wanting to leave, I think he's conducted himself very well, and he's somebody who is out of contract this season, and there's rumours of think Celtic this week are in for him, which I think would be a great move for him actually. But
Yeah, it would.
I'd like to keep him. I'd like to keep him. So yeah, no, it'd be good.
He's a popular player, and then obviously we talked off air, but Hanno Masenga will be an interesting one for
show us
Bristol City
because
fans.
we have this on YouTube, Matt.
Yeah.
Can you turn to your shirt a little bit?
Yeah.
For the
So
viewers listening on YouTube.
I don't know if you can see that, but
Look
I've
at
got a
that.
signed
Our
Hanno.
podcast, and then there's my horrible face. So, and our other podcaster member, George Poole's a big fan of Hanno, and again, he's one of them. Probably fell a little bit of victim of Burnley being in the Premier League and coming back down. Just not quite good enough, I don't think.
Yeah, he was signed. I mean, I think we signed him at certainly 18, but maybe even 17 from Monaco for a lot of money, and for us, millions.
All right, okay. How much roughly then?
Well, I mean, there was rumours that it was like it was like 4.5 million.
All right, okay, it's a lot of money,
maybe even more, yeah. And in some of his early games, because he was all energy,
he is that, isn't he? Yeah,
and obviously the hairstyle as well with him, he quickly became a real folk sort of hero for a large part of the fan base. And I'm really hoping that he's at least on the bench, because he was really popular. I don't know why it is, and it's not something I agree with at all. But he was a lad that wasn't being played. And so, yes, he saw his contract down. Now, there are fans that look at that and go, he deliberately saw his contract down and wanted to get out. He wasn't being played. So why would you,
football, isn't it?
Exactly. But they had there was a real chant for Hanno Masenga. He drinks the vodka, he drinks the cider, and his hair is massive. But he was really popular. But also, I felt a really good player. And when I got that signed sort of photo, I actually on our podcast said he will go to the very top, because I genuinely felt at his age that he was, he would. And then he stagnated a bit for us.
Yeah, I can see it. I can see he's got great energy. He came on when we beat Luton first game of the season, and I thought, and then he's not really had a chance really since. We kind of, we're quite full in that midfield area. We've got some good players in that midfield. Obviously, we signed Hannibal, who came in for United, big money player. We signed Josh Laurent, who from Stoke, who I thought was going to be a bit of a squad player, has actually done well for us. So he's probably like fifth choice central midfielder, really. So
and he found that a little. He had a few injuries with us, but as I say, his age, and I think partly, I mean, he wasn't being played with Lee Johnson, but with Nigel Pearson as well. I think Nigel didn't like the fact that he was a bit of a free spirit, and so he would, like you say, a bit like a Jack Russell, he would chase the ball, and it was kind of. But I went to a game away at Preston a couple of years back, and he was unbelievable that game. And Preston fans were, as we were walking out, and then even on social media, were saying it was the best performance they'd seen at Championship level from any opposition player. Okay. And I genuinely thought then he was really going to kick on, but he didn't. And we thought that when he went to Burnley under Company, that would be the making of him. And he's now struggling to get into your team. So
he just needs to play. He's had 18 months now at Burnley, and I don't think he's going to establish himself. I just think for him, even if he drops down to a League One team, just to play a week in,
just to play and get games, absolutely.
So I'm just going back to a point you moved there. So you mentioned obviously your assistant come in, change the formation. So you're still playing three at the back with wing backs.
Yeah,
you're going at.
Yeah, it is. So it'll be interesting this weekend.
Would you have your assistant as manager then if he's changed the style and then you're playing well?
No, I mean. I think Liam Manning still had an influence on it.
That's very much tongue in cheek, by the way.
Yeah, no, I know, mate. No, I know. Interesting as well because of obviously Luke McNally and again, get your take on him. But he came in and Liam Manning referenced it last night at the forum that he'd had very little football, and to come into the Championship and hit the ground running is not easy, especially when you're a young lad like he is. But he's been excellent. The last sort of 4 or 5 games, he's been really good. He's formed a really good partnership with Zach Viner, who's a young lad who's come up through our academy.
Fantastic.
And then we've got Cam Pring, who kind of it's one of those that it wouldn't surprise me if we went forward. Liam Manning talks very much, and it's a modern game, about our formation in possession and out of possession is different. So although we might set up as a 3, actually it's not necessarily a 3. And
Yeah.
sometimes it looks like we're playing a 10 and a solo striker, but actually the 10 goes further forward as well.
Yeah.
So we're quite fluid with the way that we play. But we've also had a lot of injuries. I mean, the interesting one, Rob Dickey, who has been brilliant for us since we got him from QPR, was our player of the year last year.
Yeah, he's a good player.
Again, had an injury. And then in the Sheffield United game, as you watched it, got sent off, so missed the Norwich game. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with him, because he's absolutely one of Liam Manning's first names on the sheet. But you kind of look at the Norwich game and say, actually, I don't know that you can drop any of those players because they played that well.
Yeah.
So I would be very, very surprised, and I don't think we've picked up any more injuries. I'd be very surprised if we don't start in the way that we started against Norwich. I think it will probably be the same
Makes
side.
sense. And it's a weird one with the international break, isn't it? You're probably like you're buzzing off that win. You want to play as soon as possible. So, and it can disrupt it. I think going back to McNally, he was kind of like in and around the squad. We lost quite a few centre halves left. We've had a few injuries there. We've got one who'll be back in the squad this weekend, Ekdal, who's a player I really like. But I think it was either between McNally or CJ Egan-Riley, because I say it's similar age, similar profile. I think Parker obviously preferred Egan-Riley, and he's formed a really good partnership with Esteve this year. And that's been one good thing about Burnley, is we're not conceding goals. And to me, Esteve's someone who I think could play. He's a Premier League player for me, in my opinion. I'm surprised he didn't, when we signed him last year from Montpellier, I'm surprised with all the players going, he was one that didn't get goal because he's a real top player. You probably see him at the weekend, big, tall, a good presence. And you mentioned there about you playing with fluidity. I think that's been Burnley's issue, especially in the final third. It's so rigid. It's very much players stay in the positions, wingers stay in positions. They don't swap. There's no like real 1-2s or overlapping. I mean, it's very rigid. And a benefit of that is that you probably don't, if you give the ball away, maybe don't get counter-attacked as much. But with forward, we play a lot. We don't, in my opinion, we don't play enough balls in behind. I know Foster's been injured for a while, so we've had Fleming up front, who's more of a 10 as well. And you can tell our squad that we've got, Matt. It's a patched up squad. It's a last minute squad and doing okay, but it's just not clicked yet. So moving ahead to the weekend. If I was a Bristol City fan personally, I'd be going into this game thinking we can turn Burnley over, because people may think of Burnley as the Premier League club last season and Vincent Kompany's Championship team, but we're a long way away from that at the moment. So I think you've got a really good chance to
I think we're confident, and I think the players are confident. I think that's born out really of, as I say, some results that we've picked up. We actually have a really good record away at Middlesbrough over the last few years, so that wasn't totally surprising. But I think for us to get anything against Leeds, and don't get me wrong, Leeds were much the better team. We had to really defend, but we defended well, and they didn't create too many clear openings. But for us to get a point against Leeds, we had a really good game against Sheffield United, albeit we came out on the wrong side of that result. So I think we are very confident in the way that we're playing. Prior to sort of speaking to you, I think a lot of Bristol City fans will look at it and say, Burnley have come down from the Prem, they're fourth. Scortt Parker has actually got a decent record, obviously with what he did at Fulham. So we probably would be looking at that and thinking a point's a good result. And don't get me wrong, it still is for us.
Yeah, no, it still is, yeah.
But actually, with what you're saying, and I think the way we've been playing, I'd kind of be disappointed not to get at least a point because of how well we're playing and the fact that you're saying it's a good time to play you. So it'd be interesting to see. As I say, we're not. We do like to counter as well, but we're not rigid at all. And you'll get we've got kind of Anis Mehmeti will certainly play one side. It will be interesting to see what he does on the other side, because we've had Mark Sykes playing there, but he was injured, and I think this will come a little bit too soon for him. We've got a young lad called Yu Hirakawa that came from the J League, who is a quality player. So I'm really looking forward to the game. I think it could be a really good game.
I hope so, because Burnley games have been pretty boring to watch
Have they?
recently.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can't lie. It's been, if you go, I don't know how much you've looked at our results, but if you go back and look at our results, there's not been many goals scored, Matt. So
No.
fingers crossed, there's a
Well,
few
yeah.
more.
Let's hope for a good game. Yeah.
Fingers crossed, yeah. So we'll round it up, and what scoreline are you going for, Matt?
I'll do it for the podcast. It's not. I don't normally give a prediction, but I'll go based on what we've said. I'll go for a 2-1 win.
Good. I think that's fair. And I'm going to go for a 0-0 draw, which won't surprise
Okay.
too many Burnley fans. And I hope it's not, because I'm making the drive down. Like I said,
and it's a long drive. I've done that plenty
Yeah.
of times, so I know what it's like. Yeah.
Yeah, no, we'll enjoy it anyway. So, Matt, I just want to say
Yeah.
thank you very much for your time. I
My
really
pleasure.
appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Yeah, and hope you enjoy the game on Saturday.
Thanks,
and
mate.
cheers. And cheers.
Good luck
No
for the
Name
rest of the
Never podcast.
season. And
Cheers.
to all
Thank
the
you.
Claret
Thank you very
fans.
much.
Cheers for that, Rich. You've got some more stats for us now, Dave.
I have indeed. Yeah, you'd expect quite a few. Here's the next two coming up. Burnley's biggest away win at Ashton Gate was by a 6-1 scoreline. That was in March 1932. The match, perhaps surprisingly, was goalless at half-time before Burnley stormed into a 6-0 lead in the second half. That was helped by a hat-trick from Jack Kelly. Cliff Morgan found the net for a late equaliser for the home side. And if you're looking for good omens ahead of this weekend, Burnley have won all of the last 7 meetings between the two clubs, home and away, which also includes a hat-trick of away wins on our last 3 visits to Ashton Gate. They were in 2012. That was with interim manager, we had a caretaker manager then, if you recall. For 2012, unbelievable 4-3 win. We won again in 2015, and then we won 2-1 in 2023 in the promotion season with Vincent Kompany as manager.
Trying to wrap my brains of. I think I remember the scoreline in 2012, but I can't. Certainly weren't the Glen Roder one, was it? No, it can't have been. Weren't Steve
Terry
Davis
Pashley.
either. Oh, Terry Pashley, yeah, long-standing member of the staff. I was thinking Steve Davis, Glenn. I was just thinking of anyone who's. Oh no, it weren't even Glenn Roder. Who were the other chap who were assistant manager? I can see his face, but I can't. I'll have to come back to that. Stuart Gray. He did some caretaker charge at some point, didn't he? But
he did.
No, very good. How did he not get the job after that away win? Terry Pashley.
Well, yeah, good question. They obviously been around at the club for a long time, and I think the manager we did end up with was a little bit better in the end, Sean Dyche.
Yeah, he's done all right, hasn't he? We'll let him off. Right then, Dave. It seems like you're only covering away victories in this podcast so far. So we'll go moving on to the results overview. The history of games between Burnley and Bristol City at Ashton Gate. I'm guessing we've done all right.
We have, yeah. We can't say this about too many teams, but Burnley have more away victories than defeats in past visits to play Bristol City. Our overall record down there currently stands at played 25. We've won 10. There have been 6 draws and 9 defeats, but they're just ahead in terms of the goal difference. Burnley have scored 36 goals to Bristol City's 39.
Brilliant. Some great stats again there, Dave. Do you want to give us a little plug of where we can find more of them?
If you want to check out the webpage I've got, it's a short link, bit.ly/ it's Burnley Stats QL, quick QL standing for quick links. And on there, you've got a menu to see a whole host of stats, details from past games, goal scorers, internationals, goal descriptions, you name it, it's on there.
Yeah, and I use it quite often. And rather than if you didn't quite catch the link, I just go onto Dave's Twitter handle and click it from there. Much easier.
Or Blue Sky these days.
Or on Blue Sky, yeah. Sorry, I forgot about that. Twitter's not the nicest place, is it? Anyway, on to the next one. So, who's the man in the middle this week?
Well, we're going to say hello once again this weekend to the younger of the 2 Madley brothers. That's Bobby Madley of Ossett near Wakefield in West Yorkshire, who'll be taking charge of a Burnley match for the 2nd time so far this season. The first occasion was our home game against Plymouth Argyle at the start of October. That means his 16 previous Burnley matches between 2011 and 2024 have now produced 5 wins for the Clarets, 4 draws and 7 defeats. His card count stands at 2 reds for Burnley players. They were Kieran Trippier and Keith Tracy, and 1 for our opponents. That was Chris Martin of Derby County. The yellow card count remains fairly even, 20 to Burnley players and 18 to our opponents. As always, we hope the post-match discussions are focused on the players and not the man in the middle.
Yeah, very much so. There's been quite a lot of talk about referees over the international break for one reason or another. I don't think we need to go into that. So, Dave, how are you feeling before the game? What are your thoughts on the Clarets' recent form and what they can do to improve the performances? If not the results have been a bit more patchy recently. But what are you wanting to see from Burnley this weekend?
Goals would be a good start. We're very good at keeping them out and not as good at scoring them at the other end. I did realise, well, I've said it all through the season, certainly after the first couple of games when we had the sort of reboot, if you will, with the transfer window madness and the players coming in and going out and coming in again. But we have struggled to score goals, and you did wonder, I did wonder back then where the goals were coming from. And it's proved to be the case. You know, we're not firing up front. We've got maybe too many square pegs in round holes, and we're not really doing what we need to in terms of getting the goals in the back of the net. We've got Zian Fleming playing as an out-and-out striker, whereas he's not really had that role previously, and that's not quite working as it might. It may well come good, but it's taking time. Lyle Foster's obviously been injured. He's not going to be involved again this weekend. Hopefully he's going to be back involved in a week or two. But it is basically goal scoring is going to be the issue. You think that if Burnley can score a goal, then we've got a chance, but we've had far too many 0-0s and even, a couple of 1-0 wins via penalties, which, you take, but it has been hard work from that point of view in terms of the attacking third of the field and the attacking threat. Very, very different to what we had in the last promotion season, where goals are just coming from everywhere. We had a player in Nathan Teller who was scoring goals for fun. You don't really see there's anyone in the team who's capable of getting 15, 20 goals a season. Or if there is, it's probably Josh Brownhill. He's our top scorer at the moment. We're not really getting goals from the places you would expect. So the challenge is to be a little bit more adventurous, maybe up front, and see if we can get grease the goals, get those going again up front, and that's going to be the challenge for us. See if we can get things moving in the last third of the field, and maybe get an early goal. An early goal will settle things, and maybe things will go from there. But it's been challenging the last few games, to say the least.
Yeah, definitely. And you never quite know what you're going to get coming out of an international break either, do you? The last time I think Foster was a doubt for that first game and probably wasn't going to play. And obviously we haven't seen him since and he's still missing. And whether that would make a difference if they can play together, I don't know. Be nice to see him mix it up a bit at the top end like he has done with moving Sarmiento. But I think it'll be a tight game as well. And Bristol City are no mugs, especially at home. They've only lost one home game all season. I was looking at. They've had 2 0-0 draws, which obviously we don't want to obviously think about. But they've only lost the one game at home to Sheffield United, which were deep in injury time after they led for a lot of the game. So I think it will be tough this weekend. Do you want to give us a score prediction?
I'm not going to say there's going to be too many goals. I think it might be a 1-1 draw or a 0-0 draw. I'm going to go 1-1.
We could probably say it's under 3 goals bet on Burnley's pretty under 3 goals in a game bet's pretty sound at the moment. I'm going to go for a 1-0 win, and I'm going for an Estev first goal for Burnley. We've not really scored many from corners. I think O'Shea's the only one this season at Luton, so I think we're due one. I think that wraps up the preview for the game. What have you got as our talking point this week, the Football League talking point?
Yeah, we did touch on this in an earlier episode towards the start of the season, but maybe now it's time to rethink the Saturday 3 p.m. Blackout for televised matches. Already this season, so many matches, including this weekend's game. That's a 12:30 p.m. kickoff again on Sky Sports Plus on Saturday. They've been moved from 3 o'clock for live coverage. We're getting games on Fridays. We're getting a lot of early games on Saturday, evening games Saturday and Sunday, where in the end it's kind of the exception now, having games kicking off when you expect them to, Saturday, 3 o'clock. So the question really for you and me to discuss is, are the current rules that broadcasters have to adhere to, so that 3 p.m. till 5 p.m. blackout on a Saturday, are they still fit for purpose?
Well, yeah, like you said, now we've actually had time to experience what the plans were at the start of the season when we first talked about it. I think we can see. Well, I don't think it is fit for purpose anymore. When we're playing games on a Sunday, for no real reason, it's probably deemed as great for fans who are watching from home, and fans who want to take in as much football as possible. But for the actual match going fan, it just makes those chances of the game being accessible just less likely. I think the one thing I will say is it seems to be planned out a bit more in advance. I've not spotted many late changes. Like, it's scheduled quite far out. I think we've got our games all the way through to the beginning of January now. It might even be the end of January. So that maybe helps a bit. But I've just found myself watching less football around I don't take in as much content around the televised games anymore. Very rarely watch Match of the Day. Very rarely watch any sort of football league show or roundup programs. I think it's become a bit overkill of the live football and the content that goes with it. You've normally got an hour preview of every game, half an hour to an hour afterwards, and just watching the Burnley game at West Brom the other week, if it weren't for that horrendous refereeing decision robbing us of the win, I have no idea what they'd have talked about before and after that game. Because anyway, I think that sums up and like that last Sunday. My wife, I've mentioned a few times on here, is a Man United season ticket holder. I'm a Burnley season ticket holder, and in the past, it's very rare that they've clashed home games. And it just, now that there's championship games all over the place, you're just more likely to get those clashes. So it makes it more difficult for me. So because I'm inconvenienced, I've fallen on that side of the argument. But what do you make of it, Dave?
Well, I think you've got to feel, first of all, for the Burnley fans. It's a fair old trip down to Bristol for a 12:30 kickoff. It's going to be a really, really early start for anyone making that trip on Saturday. So, yeah, particularly those early kickoffs are a real killer, and it must put quite a lot of people off from that. And it is, although I agree with you, I think there's been more certainty in advance of knowing what's happened. But then against that, you've got to put the inconvenience for supporters. And it's very convenient for anyone watching in their armchair or watching abroad, fans watching all over the world these days. But for the match going away fans in particular, it's difficult, really difficult.
Yeah, it's all about the money these days, and it's sadly.
Yeah.
Let us know your thoughts on that, listeners. How have you found the match experience this season and the accessibility of going to games home and away? I think, like Dave said, the main ones are if you wanted to away from home, and I think some of the games, I think Bristol City was one of them where they're charging upwards of £35 for a ticket before you're even talking about the travel. Let us know what you think. Do you agree with me and Dave that it's time to scrap the 3 p.m. Blackout and allow the coverage to bring more convenience to the actual match going fan? Right, Dave. We haven't got an away fan on live with us this week, but I think you've got a quiz question for me anyway, and for listeners to join in with.
I was having a look at it. I did mention in one of my stats earlier on, that we'd come from behind the No Nay Nevers Remembers match, and it doesn't happen that often. So I want to know how many times have Burnley come from behind to win an away game since that 2-1 win at Bristol City in 2008. They've got a whole 16 nearly 16 years coming up, and then obviously, 19, 23 away games plus cup games since then. How many times has it happened since then?
Flipping it. So we notoriously had that period where we did not come from behind to win in the Premier League, in the Dyche. It were a good few seasons that, so obviously can wipe those games just straight out. Ooh, 20. Is that too many? I've gone 20. No. It's too late. Go on.
It's spot on. That's the right answer. 20.
You're joking. That's ridiculous. That's almost as good as Stanislas Varga from George Poole. If you know, you know. If you don't, then you need to know. Brilliant. Well, that's ridiculous. Is there any more context to that, Dave, or is it just?
No, I've got one of the pages, one of the links does have turnaround, so you can go on there and you look. I actually do too. I want look at the half time and whether we turned it around, and I've got a secondary one where you can go and see where it was, whether you're behind at any point in the game. And yeah, I just out of interest checked for the Bristol City one and worked my way up the list, filtered it on away games, which you can do. And yeah, there were 20, exactly 20 since then. So an impressive guess, let's say.
I think that just shows I got pretty lucky the year that we did the Portmaster quiz. I managed to scrape a win against Tom Whittaker in the final. I think it's bits of luck like that that probably saw me over the line. Right.
Good, be looking.
Any other business, Dave?
No, nothing else to report for this week. Obviously got more for home games, but yeah, just looking forward to getting back after the international break and trying to have a decent run of games. Obviously, the games are coming thick and fast. We've got a midweek home game straight after. So, yeah, we've got the run into Christmas and New Year, which is always hectic on the pitch and also here at No Nay Never Towers as well.
Yeah, best time of the season. Thanks as always, Dave. And a big thanks to the day shift team, Rich Steele and Matt Withers from the Three Peeps in a Podcast. And most of all, thanks to you, the listeners. Let us know your thoughts ahead of the game, and don't forget to follow and subscribe to No Nay Never on all forms of social media. Natalie and the Analysis Show team will be back early next week to hopefully review an enthralling away victory, and also, like Dave just mentioned, preview the midweek home game against Coventry City. Until next time, up the Clarets.
The No Nay Never podcast is brought to you in association with the talkSPORT Fan Network. Our host and editor is Natalie Bromley, and the show is produced by Matt Moss. Our resident statistician is Dave Roberts, and our FPL expert is Adam Dennett. The Analysis Show team is collectively Tom Whittaker, Rich Steele, George Poole, Charlotte Rigby, and Adam Dennett. Our music is provided by George Gaskell, and our newsletter team is headed up by Jamie Smith. If you don't already, you can subscribe to our newsletter by visiting nonaynever.substack.com. Thanks as ever go to our partners talkSPORT. We are proud to be associated with the talkSPORT Fan Network.